So I'm Michael Jones. We've had a great day so far today. We've had a great week, the 13th annual Blue Tech Week. I'll be stepping down from an operational role at TMA Blue Tech in December, and I'll long remember the work that we've been doing together all this time. We started out today with Assistant Secretary from the Department of State, Monica Medina. She talked about a whole of government focus on the ocean and the blue economy, and how around the world people are talking about the blue economy and blue tech in a way that has not been the case before. We followed that with a panel on international U.S. and San Diego blue economy reports. Speaker from the European Commission, from NOAA IUS, then the San Diego study that has just been completed. Incredibly impactful is what they were saying. Blue economy growth and focus. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The panel just before this was on the U.S. blue economy and blue tech policy, moderated by Mark Spalding from the Ocean Foundation, high-level speakers from the Department of Commerce, State, and Energy, plus Dr. Margaret Leinen from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. Focus, focus, focus on the blue economy in the U.S. and around the world. And they talked about COP26 as having an ocean economy focus like never before. And aqua optimism was on full view. This panel is on the state of California. What role will we play in shaping the global blue economy? And following this is a panel on the San Diego region. If you have time, please join us for the roundtable after that panel. I have the honor of introducing the Honorable Betty Yee, who was elected State Controller in November 2014. She was re-elected for a second term as Controller in 2018. She's only the 10th woman in California history to be elected to statewide office. She has more than 35 years of experience in public service, specializing in state and local finance and tax policy. She's the state's chief financial officer and serves on dozens of boards and commissions. As a member of the State Lands Commission and chairperson in even-numbered years, she helps promote stewardship of public trust lands, including marine-related. Betty joined TMA as a speaker for the first time at the 2016 Gala Dinner and has participated in every annual Blue Tech Week since then. She's been a major supporter of the blue economy and blue tech in the state of California. We look forward today to her panel on promoting a sustainable blue economy in the state of California. I'd like to introduce State Controller Betty Yee to speak and moderate. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, very much. And thank you for your leadership of TMA Blue Tech. And it's been such a great partnership working together. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. And thank you for joining us for what I know will be an engaging panel. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce each of the panelists. We have a remarkable panel of experts who really are leading and guiding this work in the state of California. First, let me introduce Karen Douglas, Commissioner Karen Douglas with the California Energy Commission. Karen is serving her third term on the California Energy Commission. She served as its chair from February 2009 to February 2011. Commissioner Douglas also served as director of the California Climate Initiative at the Environmental Defense Fund. Before going to EDF, Commissioner Douglas spent 4 years at the Planning and Conservation League. Commissioner Douglas graduated from Stanford Law School in 2001 and has a master's degree in public policy from the University of Colorado Boulder. Welcome, Karen. Next, we have Jennifer Lucchesi, who is the executive officer of the State Lands Commission. Jennifer has worked for the Commission since November 1999, and the Commission, which I have the honor of serving, appointed Jennifer as its executive officer in December 2012. Born in Seattle, Washington, Jennifer has spent most of her life in California, growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in agribusiness from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and began her career at the Commission as a land agent in the Land Management Division, primarily working with ports and harbor districts on waterfront redevelopment efforts. And also while working in the Land Management Division, she attended evening classes at the University of Pacific's McGeorge School of Law and began her legal career at the Commission in 2006 after earning her Juris Doctorate from McGeorge School of Law. She has worked for the Commission on projects in virtually every county in the state, intimately familiar with all 58 counties of our state, with an emphasis on land use, waterfront development, and boundary issues involving ports, harbor districts, and waterways, including title settlements and land exchanges, to facilitate redevelopment projects in Chula Vista, Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oakland, and San Francisco. Prior to her appointment, Jennifer served as the Commission's Chief Counsel. Welcome, Jennifer. And we also have with us Dr. Liz White, the Executive Director of the California Ocean Science Trust. Liz the California Ocean Science Trust is a nonprofit organization that many of us really look to for always relying on the best available science to guide the work that we all do. This is an organization dedicated to accelerating progress towards a healthy and productive ocean future for California. Created by state legislation, the Ocean Science Trust bridges the gap between cutting-edge scientific research and sound ocean management. Liz has a decade of experience working at the science policy interface in California on topics ranging from marine protected areas to sea level rise and ocean acidification. Trained as a marine ecologist in the United Kingdom, Liz also spent a decade in the Caribbean promoting science-informed decisions for fisheries and marine and protected area management. Liz received her PhD from the University of East Anglia in the UK. Welcome, Liz. Before we get started, just to maybe set the stage a bit, when we talk about the blue economy, and particularly as it relates to California, California is home to one of the most diverse ocean and coastal ecosystems in the world, and has a marine economy valued at more than $44 billion a year. So climate change obviously is causing a number of stressors up and down the coast, from ocean acidification to sea level rise. And our goal here, really, when we look at our oceans, is how do we look at protecting ocean health when we know that more demands are going to be made on our oceans as a source of food, as a source of energy, continuing to be a source of many of our scientific research that is going to guide all of the work that we do. And so as we speak today about the blue economy, we will speak about it from a number of different dimensions. And without further delay, I just want to turn it over to the panel and maybe have Karen start. And I'm going to just have you pass the baton to Jennifer and then to Liz to just set the stage about the work that each of you currently is doing. And we will then talk more broadly about just what are the ingredients to make for a sustainable blue economy and building on the work that's already in progress in California. So Karen, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Betty, for the invitation to be here today and the introduction and participation in this panel. I just wanted to start by giving a little background about what I do. As the controller noted, I'm a third-term commissioner on the California Energy Commission, and throughout my time on the commission, I have been focused in various ways on the renewable energy build out that it's going to take for us to meet our climate goals. And I've had the pleasure of working with State Lands Commission actually throughout that time, whether it has been focused on desert projects or thinking about transmission, or more recently working very closely on offshore wind. In the offshore wind area, I've been working as the point person in collaboration with a broad set of state agencies on the BOEM California Intergovernmental Task Force for offshore wind. And we've been part of this effort since 2016, late 2016, when the task force was first established. And we've worked to ensure that the state was part of the offshore wind planning initiatives from the very beginning in California, looking at appropriate areas for potential offshore wind development areas, doing public outreach, doing tribal and stakeholder outreach, fishing outreach, and building a strong interagency team to look at how California can best position to take advantage of this tremendous renewable resource opportunity, and also economic and jobs potential opportunity for us in the state. So in terms of our renewable energy goals, California sets world standards in our efforts to reduce carbon from our economy and to transition to a clean energy future. We're just back, I know, from the climate talks, the COP26 climate talks, where the lieutenant governor led a very strong state delegation, and there was a tremendous amount of focus on offshore wind and the many opportunities to learn from the experience of the build out of offshore wind in Europe. In terms of our goals, we are working to achieve a 40% greenhouse gas reduction to 1990 levels by 2030. That's part of SB 32. Carbon neutrality by 2045 per executive order. And under SB 100, a 60% renewables portfolio standard by 2030 and 100% renewable and clean energy system by 2045. So those are some of the benchmarks that we're looking at in the nearer term, for example, 2030, and the longer term, like 2045. We have done, in collaboration with the PUC and the independent system operator, modeling on what it will take to achieve these targets. That modeling is, at least the first round of that modeling came out in a report, a joint agency report, and it found that it is technically feasible to meet the targets. It's not easy to meet the targets. And the modeling that we did assumes 10 gigawatts of offshore wind. What we actually did is we set a threshold where the model could select up to 10 gigawatts of offshore wind, and the model did. So if we had allowed the model to go higher, it may have gone higher. And that's one of the things we'll have to test as we move forward here. So as we look ahead to 2022, and I think particularly the period between January and June or July 2022, it's going to represent a huge acceleration of the already intensive work on offshore wind that's going on in California. What has been achieved this year is that we have been able to, in partnership with the Biden administration, identify an area for offshore wind off of the Central Coast. Just recently, BOEM has established officially a wind energy area off of the Central Coast. There is a wind energy area off of Humboldt Bay. It took us a long time to get to this point. And now that we're at this point, we'll be working closely with BOEM on the next steps of the process, both on the state side and the federal side. So on the state side, this goes to the Coastal Commission. It requires more work with State Lands Commission and collaboration with other agencies and public outreach, and real efforts to learn from experiences on the East Coast and internationally. At the same time that we're looking at this process, which under the timelines that BOEM has established so far, could lead to, or would lead to a proposed sale notice for those areas in the summer, and leasing or an auction in the fall of 2022. We're also working to implement AB 525, which calls on the Energy Commission, working in collaboration with our partner agencies, to establish a strategic plan for offshore wind, and really beginning with the establishment of a planning target or a planning goal next summer. In the planning goal, we're also asked to consider a wide range of factors, from ratepayer impacts and benefits to workforce and economic opportunities and ports and much more. So I really expect to be very busy on this front, but also to be pulling in a lot of stakeholder views and a lot of views from our partner agencies, so that California can really gear up at this key moment and get this right, because we do see offshore wind as a tremendous opportunity for state climate and energy goals, but also for the blue economy and for workforce and for infrastructure. So and for thinking through how we use our ports and where we see some real opportunities. So I'll stop there, at least for my introductory comments. And again, thank you for inviting me to be here.
Thank you, Karen, very much. Jennifer?
Yes, hi. I do have some slides, so hopefully those will be pulled up. Great, thank you. It is a pleasure and an honor to speak on this panel with my sister agency colleagues as the Executive Officer of the State Lands Commission. Next slide, please. The Commission is excited to be one of the leaders and champions of California's sustainable blue economy future, and to work in partnership with all of you to chart the path forward to harness renewable energy, combat the climate crisis, ensure food supply resiliency, and provide greater opportunities for our ocean environment and blue economy to thrive together. As a land-owning agency that oversees the management of approximately 4 million acres of public tidelands and submerged lands, we are working hard alongside our ports and our harbor district trustees to diversify our leasing and revenue-generating portfolio and position ourselves to promote the sustainable blue economy of the future. We are stewards of these lands and resources on behalf of the public and facilitate their use consistent with the principles of the public trust doctrine. This common law doctrine is the foundational legal and policy framework that guides the Commission in the management and protection of our tidelands, submerged lands, and navigable waterways. It ensures the public's right to access these lands and resources for water-dependent uses like maritime trade and commerce and shipping, navigation, commercial fishing, coastal recreation and tourism, and open space and conservation. This doctrine paves the way for a sustainable blue economy because at its core it is about balance and responsible use. And the underlying principle of the doctrine is that as a common law doctrine, it transforms and evolves as our society's needs, principles, and values change over time. The doctrine is not static, but evolves as our communities evolve. Next slide, please. At the end of 2020, the State Lands Commission adopted an ambitious and aspirational new strategic plan for the next 5 years. This plan outlines our core values and guiding principles that shape how the Commission conducts its activities and responds to the challenges and opportunities in managing our coastal lands and resources. The principles and values are aligned with the public trust doctrine and shape our vision for the state's blue economy so that it is inclusive, sustainable, equitable, and a collaborative initiative benefiting all the people of California. Next slide, please. The reality is we have to build a sustainable blue economy in a rapidly changing climate. Advancing resiliency to climate change is a state priority and one of the Commission's most important strategic goals. To us, climate resiliency for the coast means reducing fossil fuel emissions, scaling up renewable energy sources, and advancing coastal adaptation at the same time. These actions together will protect our public trust lands and resources for continued use for many generations to come. The Commission is integrating climate resilient planning into our activities and decisions, including in all new leases. In addition, our port and harbor trustee partners are analyzing their vulnerability to sea level rise and adaptation options for protecting public trust lands and resources. Many trustees, like the Port of San Diego, are planning to implement multi-benefit projects where feasible, like living shorelines, that will protect assets, provide habitat, and aid in carbon sequestration. Soon we will issue recommendations the state can support these local efforts. We recognize that the blue economy is not only an opportunity to improve climate resiliency, but also reflects a key challenge of ensuring that our coastal communities and economy are climate resilient. Next slide, please. A key component of the blue economy and indeed climate resiliency involves energy transformation. That is the electrification of our ports to support cleaner operations and the implementation of renewable energy to support our state energy needs. Through our strategic plan, we recognize the need to justly transition activities from those responsible for carbon emissions to renewable and sustainable activities. And we are committed to evaluating opportunities that seek to advance renewable energy initiatives such as wind and wave energy in collaboration with valued stakeholders, including coastal and inland communities, the fishing industry, environmental advocates, government partners, and our tribal partners. Specifically, we are pursuing parallel tracks of facilitating geothermal, solar, and wind development while actively working to abandon idle wells ahead of regulatory requirements, decommission offshore facilities like Platform Holly and Rincon Island in the Santa Barbara Channel, and remediating offshore orphan legacy wells. The Commission has facilitated the termination of 10 offshore oil and gas leases, returning over 20,000 acres to the coastal sanctuary in the last 6 years alone. Next slide, please. Under the strategic plan focus area, meeting evolving public trust needs, the Commission is committed to supporting our trustees and lessees in their efforts to thrive and balance sustainability and equity with economic growth. The continued growth and development of the blue economy provides opportunities for the Commission to collaborate and coordinate with ports and working waterfronts on projects and activities that have lasting benefits. This sector is rich in opportunity to develop sustainable practices that are environmentally sound, economically important, and beneficial to communities. For example, we are about to embark on a study in conjunction with BOEM to look at optimal port conditions and requirements for supporting offshore wind energy industry. This is consistent with AB 525 that Commissioner Douglas just mentioned. It is exciting to explore new economic opportunities for working waterfronts like offshore wind that are also compatible with our environmental values. Another sector the Commission is involved with is the multi-agency effort to grow our state sustainable aquaculture industry, which could lead to new job creation and business growth, enhanced food security, and climate resiliency. And over the next few years, we'll be involved with creating the statewide aquaculture action plan, an initiative led by the Ocean Protection Council. This will be a resource to improve transparency and facilitate the permitting of sustainable aquaculture farms that are compatible with the commercial fishing industry and marine protected areas. Next slide, please. We recognize that community and local partners are critical to advancing blue economy initiatives. It is also important that these initiatives address systemic inequities and are rooted in the principles of environmental justice. And our strategic plan emphasizes these principles. Commission staff are now working on developing an implementation for our environmental justice policy we recently adopted. The plan will outline how we integrate environmental justice throughout all of our practices and programs. The growth of the blue economy will advance equity through the provision of economic, environmental, and community benefits. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you for the opportunity to share our vision for the future and how we plan to promote our state's sustainable blue economy, and I look forward to the discussion. I think I'm supposed to pass the baton on to you, Liz.
Yes. Yes. We can't hear you, Liz. There you go.
Okay, let's try this again. Wonderful. Okay, thumbs up. Good morning. It's a real privilege to be here with you today. I'd like to take just a few minutes following my colleagues to describe from my vantage point in California the importance of tapping more fully into the potential of California's science community to accelerate delivery of solutions that can both support a sustainable blue economy and tackle the climate challenges now and ahead. A quick introduction to Ocean Science Trust, because I think it provides important context for my perspective. We're, as the controller mentioned, an independent nonprofit organization dedicated to science accelerating progress to a healthy, equitable, and productive coast and ocean. But we're unusual because we were created by California legislation to formally bridge and narrow the gap between cutting-edge research and sound ocean management. So we aspire to bring the best-in-class research and innovation from the University of California, California State Universities, and independent science institutions, together with state policymakers and lawmakers to foster action. So with that context and putting my scientist hat on, I think for many of us, the release of the IPCC Physical Science Report earlier this year, even more starkly than we expected, underscored the need to accelerate action on climate. And I don't need to tell this audience that that means accelerating on science and coasts and oceans as an important part of the solution. But I too was fortunate to spend time in London and Glasgow during COP26. And it struck me that while coasts and oceans, as has already been noted, were being lifted to a more significant role in the dialogue and illustrated as not just victim and afterthought, but as a source of solutions, nonetheless, not completely, but somewhat, the academic research community was to a large extent being relegated to the role of raising the alarm, documenting the challenge, and deepening our understanding of the problems we face in intricate detail. Now, this is critically important, and I'm so, of course, pleased to see science play this role. But at the same time, we're not really tapping into the potential of the science and research community to deliver on solutions. So how do we accelerate on that? Three thoughts along those lines. Some of this is driven by how we ask questions of the scientific community. As you likely know, the classic model of research funding is to produce a result and then cast around as to how best to deliver it to a management audience. We need to sort of flip that logic. And for example, when we were asked to update the science supporting the state's sea level rise guidance, we first engaged local, regional, state level users of the guidance, both government and non-governmental, to say, what decisions are you going to make? How will you use this information? And from that, the scientists were actually able to deliver relevant information. In this case, producing localized probabilities of sea level rise that took account of different risk thresholds and tolerances. We also completed this in 5 months, which is a testament to the commitment of the scientists involved, because it's not good enough anymore for the research community to say, thank you, we'll study that for 2 years and get back to you. We've already heard the urgency in action from my colleagues on the panel. We also need to broaden what expertise disciplines are engaged in solution development. So just as a very small example, we have a project underway right now that is bringing environmental justice and equity experts, community-based leaders, together with your usual suspects of engineers and natural scientists, to develop policy recommendations on how you center equity goals, such as siting, access, jobs, and training, in nature-based solutions. Specifically, in this case, we're looking at living shorelines. But the same kinds of transdisciplinary science approaches can be used to engage researchers in delivering roadmaps, for example, on how you balance aquaculture or an energy development, or questions such as options and scenarios for community-based agreements as new sectors such as offshore wind are developed. In this case, we think there's a really important role for an independent science entity and science in general to cut across the different interests and motivations of government and industry and stakeholders and serve as an honest broker to develop sort of a suite of balancing options. How we invest in science and research also matters. We can't assume that the traditional methods of funding knowledge advancement will work if what we want are solutions. Indeed, classic approaches, I think, tend to incentivize competition between university campuses and departments and silos between disciplines. There are some new models that we could emulate here in California in service of a sustainable blue economy. Things like, just to call a couple of examples, the Catapult model of Innovate UK aims to shorten the distance between academic research and development and market application. And the Challenge model of science investment by the US federal government is inspiring kind of goal-oriented science innovation. Now, these challenge models are often oriented towards technology, and that's applicable here, of course, whether we're talking about new fishing technologies to reduce whale entanglement, new approaches for ocean observation, new methods for plastic abatement, the list goes on and on. But the challenge model can also be applied to other kinds of solutions, such as insurance innovations to mitigate risk and harm, or social resilience strategies in coastal communities. Often what's embedded in these models is a requirement for community and industry partnership. So I'd be really interested in hearing from the audience about both bright spots and barriers for industry partnership with the academic research community as we collectively aspire to advance a sustainable blue economy. And my final piece is, Ocean Science Trust, we have a mandate in our founding legislation to support graduate education and a commitment to future ocean and science workforce development. Currently, with philanthropic support and partners at UC Davis and San Francisco State, we're implementing an initiative to look at bright spots in advancing inclusion, equity, and diversity in ocean science graduate education. We know that solutions to climate challenges and pathways to sustained economic development will only come from a future workforce that truly represents California's diversity. So in addition to conversations about culture change and curricular change within academia itself, what's relevant here for this dialogue is that a significant component of the discussion is about illuminating new career pathways and responsibility for mentoring students from historically excluded communities in exploring STEM and blue economy careers. My sense is that in California, we've made great strides in science policy fellowship opportunities in our partner organizations like CCST and Sea Grant, but we're perhaps not yet organized in ways that we could be for the future around network of opportunities for industry internships and externships in partnership with university or community college programs. So again, in the same spirit of taking bright spots and trying to amplify and lift those, I'm also really interested in learning more about where programs do exist and how we might indeed lift and amplify those. So I'll pause there and say thank you and turn back to the controller for discussion.
Thank you so much, Liz, and to Jennifer and to Karen. All of you have raised some similar themes, but I wanted to just tee off of one that Liz just focused on, and I think we're all focused on, and certainly has been getting much more attention globally, and that is when we talk about the just transition, that we are not just talking about the transition of whether it's energy or itself, but and economic transition. But how do we look at an economy that is hopefully going to be one of shared prosperity? And I think the building blocks that you spoke about, Liz, are very critical with respect to how we engage more of our burdened communities, traditionally burdened communities, to be part of the solution set here. But I wanted to just pose to both, all three of you, as we maybe set the stage for some of the audience questions, because I do think these are really topical in terms of the solutions going forward. Just how does the blue economy contribute to supporting the workforce of the future? I think our educational institutions play a huge role, but I know that in other aspects of technology, particularly in the life sciences technology arena, a very, very focused effort on really exposing young people to the field. Internships and externships are very, very key to that, particularly from those communities that are underserved relative to healthcare access. But just how does a blue economy contribute to the workforce of the future? What do these jobs look like? What are some of the jobs that could be available? And then as we talk about environmental justice and how we think about a sustainable blue economy, we talked about the whole concept of building resilience, but what are some of the principles that really need to be kept top of mind by all parties as we do this work together? So maybe I'll start with Karen, you on particularly as you're doing this work on offshore wind.
Thank you. You know, this is an area where we know we don't have all of the answers. The Energy Commission has an informal equity roundtable a couple times a year, and I actually had the opportunity to participate in it a few days ago. And one of the topics I brought to it was offshore wind, just to make sure that I took advantage of that informal conversation to be able to raise awareness of how that issue is developing and unfolding in California, and to hear from some of the equity CBOs participating in that meeting about how they could become more engaged in the discussion. It's clear that there are a lot of opportunities here. It's clear that we're looking closely at some of the way that offshore wind unfolded on the East Coast, and we're looking closely at some of the community benefit agreements, but just approaches to that different states have taken, and that different over time, some of the approaches that have evolved that BOEM has taken in this area. And I don't know that we have, I know that we have not landed on our thoughts on how we think California should act in this space in order to best achieve some of these goals, economic development and job creation and equity within that. But we do have an opportunity next year, especially as we start working through the AB 525 process and start thinking very specifically about lease sales in 2 different parts of California. We will find those issues front and center. And I think it's really on us to try to create the right opportunities for engagement at the right time so that we can be informed by the different perspectives that can help us here.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Jennifer, your thoughts?
Yeah, you may remember, well, I know you remember Controller Yee. At least my first real in-depth experience with transition and workforce transition was the Commission's involvement in the planned closure of Diablo Canyon. And as part of the Commission's consideration of the offshore lease through the end of the term, the NRC term for Diablo, there were separate agreements that really highlighted and emphasized and required workforce transition to address the significant transformation that we are seeing on our coastline with multiple nuclear power plants going offline, the decommissioning of many offshore oil and gas platforms. We're also very involved on a more personal level in our own agency as a traditionally oil and gas development and production agency, transforming our own workforce to meet the needs of the future, including how we transition, train, educate our existing staff of engineers so that they can meet the challenges of the renewable energy future. So from those different perspectives, and then also having those relationships with our ports and our harbor district trustees, with our lessees, our business lessees, looking at different opportunities and leverages to help leverage the right momentum and advancement in terms of investments in education, training, and creating additional opportunities. So that's how I look at the Commission's role in trying to advance some of the workforce goals and objectives that we have, especially based on our most recent experience. Building an equity to that is fundamental. I think the blue economy represents a mosaic of healthy, sustainable, and innovative practices, businesses, and industries, which will obviously expand economic opportunities and support a growing and dynamic workforce. But between private industry, academic, the government, local communities, and our stakeholders, we have to really all kind of start rowing in the same direction so that these opportunities can actually be realized. And I think that as we look at the just transition, it's about protecting workers' rights and livelihoods as the economy shifts towards more sustainable practices. I think communities and individuals, when they know that this transition is happening and that it's necessary to protect our health, our safety. At the same time, it's extremely scary to see their future changing in a way that it's uncertain to them. And so I think that's especially where government can step in and provide some of that certainty through education, training, opportunities. So I think from an equity perspective, that has to be a priority for us.
Absolutely. And Liz, I can't highlight enough your emphasis on our educational institutions and the significant role they have to play, as you say, more than just sounding the alarm on what we're about to undertake, but the role of higher education institutions and just I think the traditional workforce training avenues that workers have been used to, I think also we'll need to take a look at how to innovate during this time. Can you maybe speak a little bit more about what you see on the horizon relative to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. We're fortunate to work very closely with COAST, the council that coordinates across the CSU system, who, as you know, the CSUs themselves are the engines of a lot of the future workforce. And what we're learning from engaging with folk at Coast and students and faculty is that most of the career options remain invisible. I think most of us had a formative moment where we were, had an opportunity, were exposed to a new career pathway that perhaps we just didn't know existed. I certainly wouldn't have imagined ending up living and working as a scientist in California, and I, was offered an awful lot of privilege. So I think that underscoring what we've already said, the opportunities to connect education and training with industry, with civil service as well. Because one of the things I think we do know as well about the blue economy is that the questions are not getting easier. The challenges, faced by my state colleagues are not getting easier. And it sort of demands a focus on technical training in new ways than we've seen in the past. And the traditional sort of disciplines by which universities are classically structured don't necessarily align with the societal needs of today. So more work to do, but I think we're well poised in California to respond appropriately.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really grateful for the leadership in California, and large part to the work that the three of you are doing. As I think about just what's coming in from some of the viewers today, obviously education is playing a huge role, and one of the questions really has to do with how do we really promote the blue economy in a broader fashion. It seems to be very gets regionalized focus, but I think as we look at it as a statewide initiative about how we are building a sustainable blue economy, there may be disconnects with respect to just what the benefits are to some who maybe are not near coastal or marine resources. So how do we look to build that awareness and certainly just bring a bigger focus to the importance of building such a sustainable economy? Jennifer, you want to take that first?
So, sure. I think what we're doing now in terms of whether it's in conferences like this, at our state agency meetings, in the different initiatives that all of us are pursuing, making a part of our everyday language that we use, that acknowledging that we are seeing a huge transition of our ocean and its use. I mean, looking back at the last 100 years of energy policy in the state and how the extractive foundation of that and how that really set the foundation for how our ocean looks today and how we're looking to change that. And really making connections back to inland communities about what that means to them. We've been doing a lot of work with Ocean Protection Council and the Coastal Commission from a sea level rise perspective in terms of really trying to use the right language and words to connect the benefits and the health benefits, the recreational benefits of ocean use and beach use from everyone in the state and what sea level rise means to them. It's not just about the impacts to those local coastal economies. I think we have to do very similar things in terms of our energy transformation, as well as the opportunities that the blue economy can provide. So it's really just building it into our everyday language and really highlighting and emphasizing the opportunities. And then also looking at all the programs, the actions, the decisions that we make every day, whether it's at a staff level or a policy level, that it's looked at through those lenses of equity, of climate resilience, of economic resilience and enhancement, and making sure that we're ticking those boxes and looking for those opportunities as part of those decisions. And we just don't get back into a routine route of decision making that doesn't take those kinds of considerations into account.
You remind me of something that former Governor Brown used to always say, that we're not going to have a universal focus on these issues until they become the topic of dinner table conversations. And so I think each of us has a role to play in that. Karen, I wanted to just switch up the question a little bit, because there was some interest with respect to, we're talking about California, the fifth largest economy in the world. Is there a benefit, or will there be some near-term initiatives to partner with other countries in the world with respect to some of the work that we're doing? Are there going to be potential MOUs with other countries like Norway and Portugal, and maybe the EU itself, when it comes to just some of the initiatives that you're working on?
Well, thank you for that question. And I think I'll say a few things about each question, actually, because in terms of the blue economy, I think what I wanted to add on to what Jennifer said is that we are not just talking about the blue economy or the energy transition in the marine and coastal space. We're in a broad energy transition, statewide, nationally, and globally. And it's really recognizing that and the climate adaptation and the climate impacts that come with it. In my world, it's about heat waves and wildfires and energy resilience and transition to renewable energy and maintaining reliability and the tremendous amount of build out that's going to be required for transmission, for new generation, for solutions to maintain reliability. And offshore wind and the blue economy more generally is a piece of this, but it's not alone. And that's part of the integrative thinking that Jennifer was mentioning too, because it's very easy for me in an inland conversation when we're talking about, say, more solar coming to the San Joaquin Valley. That's an opportunity for us to say, and by the way, this other industry, offshore wind, it's not that far from you. There are connections. There are statewide connections, there are regional, there are national and international, which is where I'll go next. We actually, from the Energy Commission and from the state generally, have been very outwardly focused on climate policy, on energy policy, and specifically on offshore wind, because we recognized that there's so much to learn internationally. And so we do have an MOU. The Energy Commission has an MOU with Denmark. We have a very close relationship. We have an MOU with Scotland, and we've done informational exchanges through both of those. We've got a very close working relationship with the Norwegian government, and we've gotten, we're actually working on a very detailed set of information exchanges with them. And I literally just earlier this week on Monday and Tuesday, the Energy Commission hosted the fifth annual bilateral energy conference with Germany. And so I spoke on an offshore wind panel there, and also had the opportunity to have dinner with the German delegation later in San Francisco, and we talked a lot about offshore wind. So one of the things that when I talk to stakeholders, and I ask, stakeholders often ask me, are you aware of what's happening in Europe? Are you interested in it? Are you trying to bring those lessons learned back to California? And I've asked stakeholders, just would you be interested if we asked our international partners to take part in a workshop and talk about their experiences to a California audience, not just government officials, but a stakeholder or a public audience? Do you think there would be interest? And I'm hearing yes. And so that's one of the things that we're exploring right now is can we leverage our partnerships, not just to learn ourselves, but to provide opportunities more broadly for interested stakeholders or agencies to benefit from the information exchange.
Absolutely. And Liz, particularly in the area of science, just in terms of best available science, we are getting that from throughout the world. And I know that the EU with the Mission Starfish Report and NOAA are looking at a kind of a whole water cycle that includes ocean and fresh water. And is this going to help us in terms of how we think about our work in California as being, holistic in that same approach? And how do we rely on our, potential partners globally as well?
Yeah, I think there's opportunity in one of the things that the Mission Starfish report did was to both connect inland water to coast, but also broaden, as I mentioned before, broaden the disciplinary expertise that is in the conversation. We have a long and very rigorous history of managing our ocean resources with the strength of natural science expertise here in the state and beyond. And what the climate crisis and what the future holds demands that we sort of right the balance with the range of social sciences that really we need to bring to the table, with cultural knowledge, economics, geographers. We talk a lot about building things like coastal community resilience, and do so on the back of measuring fish population size, which clearly there's a disconnect there. And I think one of the things that it's unfortunate that this is happening, but inland communities are experiencing and attempting more access to the ocean that they have ever done before, as cooling centers, as traveling to the beach. And you have populations who just suddenly experience an environment that they've only ever seen on TV, and it's for the unfortunate reason of needing a cooling center. But if we can try and capture those holistic strategies in inland community resilience is going to rely on, in some ways, access to the coast, transportation options, time, then bring the data that supports developing those holistic solutions to resilience. Then I think we stand a chance of science really sort of supporting the energy transition and addressing adaptation needs.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So key to the or top of mind of many of our audience members is dollars. And the question of is there funding available to invest in blue tech funds in California? And then also, is there a commitment to look at this whole concept of blue tech clusters that we are starting to see developing in the private sector? But does that bring value to certainly the work that all of you are focused on, each of you is focused on now? Liz, you want to start with that?
Yeah, happy to. I think, that we need to, I mentioned my own personal view that I think we can disrupt research funding a little bit more. And there are models coming from Europe and coming from the US more broadly on how we can, in essence, demand community and industry partnerships in R&D investments that can sort of backstop and encourage innovation and entrepreneurial, business sectors with the support of our education and research institutions in California. So I think there are certainly mechanisms that we could employ here to do that.
I like that whole concept of disrupting. It really does, I think, demand kind of a different mindset with respect to just how our dollars have traditionally been used. Karen, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think we're in a position where we see a lot of rapid change. We need new ideas. We need new ways of scaling up good ideas. It's in a lot of cases, it's all about getting scale. And anyway, yeah, I'm also interested in hearing input and ideas on this.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I would just add that we could also take ideas from some of our ports and harbor districts on this, in particular the Port of San Diego and the Port of Los Angeles, in their own unique ways, have invested public dollars into building their own blue economy and blue tech clusters. And trying to do what they can in advancing the blue economy and blue tech. So that's definitely, I think, a resource to look at in terms of what the state might be able to do as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm going to turn this last set of questions to each of you, and that is, what would be your ask of industry when we are all responsible for how to best safeguard our coastal and marine ecosystems and communities in the face of climate change, certainly looking at advancing equity and across our ocean and coastal protection actions and policies. We certainly want to continue to enhance our marine biodiversity and coastal biodiversity. And this work about the blue economy at its most fundamental level has to be on the foundation of protecting and improving ocean health. And so what would be for each of you, your top two asks of industry as the state continues to do its work and looks forward to the partnership with some of the audience members? Karen, let me start with you on that.
Well, I think that there's a lot there. I think the state needs to be clear about what we want and expect from industry. And at the same time, I think we very much want industry to engage with us, make an effort to really focus on and understand the California context, and also engage in a productive and proactive way with California stakeholders. And I think they want to do that, certainly in the offshore wind space, but I think it's just going to be very important that continue.
Okay. Jennifer?
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what Karen was just saying. I think it would be really wonderful for industry when they're coming to talk with us government agencies and wanting to advance their projects, that they come with a foundational understanding that we have to build support through really meaningful and comprehensive engagement with communities and with all of our different stakeholders, including our tribal governments. And that's just part of the process. It's not an add-on. It is the start, the middle, and the end of the process. And that it's not just about mitigating impacts from your project or your ideas. It's about what are the tangible benefits to these local communities and these regional communities, and how do we enhance that and ensure that those benefits are actually realized. And I think in exchange, what we as government can do is make sure we're talking to each other and being as efficient and effective in messaging what the state's objectives and goals are, and doing the best we can to both respect individual jurisdictions and authorities, but also streamline the process so there's certainty of process, not certainty of decision, but certainty of process moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Liz, your top two asks.
So sitting in a slightly different place as a non-governmental organization that plays this largely brokering role, I feel like we have spent many years understanding how to listen and engage with our government partners, and I don't feel like I have the same understanding of how to engage with industry. Sector by sector or geography by geography to better sort of understand what your science and research needs are and how university partnerships could foster those. And so, my asks are the obvious that we have said, many of us here already, about offering training opportunities and hosting students for future workforce development, and also, engaging with us to understand, how would we build successful university partnerships?
All right. Well, so thank you. It was a great panel. Betty apparently got bumped out by mistake by somebody coming in. But all of you are very enthusiastic supporters of the blue economy in the state of California. You're also decision makers. And we've got 25 seconds. Betty has been an incredibly supportive voice related to blue economy and blue tech. I think the question for me is always, what can the state of California do as a world leader? You know, I think we ought to think about, and I think, Karen, you mentioned this, but new ways of doing things, whether it's MOUs, it's having sessions where we bring industry in to talk. Sacramento's a long way from the coast in some regards, and perhaps we need to bring all those people together and talk about some of these opportunities. And we certainly would like clusters to be involved because often the small companies can't come, and that's a role that people like us can play. So I really want to applaud all of your work, the fact that you're here today, that Betty unfortunately got knocked off by somebody eager to come into the next panel, but it shows and frankly, from all day, all we've been hearing about is the international and national interest in the blue economy and blue tech. So I hope that you'll work with us to promote the state in ways that it's seen around the world as an innovator. So thank you for the work you do. And I'm sorry we lost Betty for the moment. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye.